Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Finding Help with Special Needs. I am Lola Aneki, and today we'll be talking about the SWOT of Collaborative Approaches in Inclusive Education or Inclusive Practice. But last week, I want to talk about what I'm going to talk about what we talked about last week, what we discussed last week. Last week, we talked about the values from the Nigerian Disability Act, and we tried to look at some of the values and some of the things that could be beneficial to us in as it, as the implementation is about to take place in the next few years. What are those things we feel could be added to the policy so that it can just for it to be amended as time goes on? And if you've not seen that episode, I'll urge you to please go to my YouTube channel and find episode 16 of Finding Out with Special Needs to get into the flow of what was discussed last week. Now, this week, like I said, we'll be talking about the SWOT of collaborative approaches in inclusive education. And this is episode 17, so let's get to it. Most times when I come up with my topics, it has to do with a story behind there's a story behind the topic always. So there are two things I remembered when I was putting this topic together. And the first one was a couple of months back, sometime last year, I got a call from a strange number, and the person goes, "Hello, is that Lola Aneke? Do you conduct assessments?" And I said, "Yes, but most times the assessment I conduct are not diagnostic. They are not diagnostic. They are placement assessments. So if a child is living with autism or communication disorder or even dyslexia, what I do is I do the formal assessment, and then I'm able to get the placement where the child is depending on the disability with communication, and that helps to provide the necessary. It shows me the weaknesses and the strength of the child and the various areas. Usually a program that I use to conduct those assessments, and then it helps me to build on the child's goals and IEP, possible IEPs, and then the program begins from there. But then the lady said to me, so I said to the lady, "What is the challenge? What have you seen in this child?" And she goes, "I can't tell you. If I tell you, that means I'm telling you the answer, or I'm telling you what is wrong with the child." And I'm like, hold on. For me to be able to do a placement assessment, one, there should be a diagnosis. So if there is no diagnosis, what have you seen so that guide me as to what kind of assessments, placement assessment I should provide for the child? And by the way, if we're talking about inclusive education, I need you to tell me what's going on, and that's where collaboration comes in. Collaboration is one critical 21st century skill that has to do with learning. If you think of it critically, we have the critical thinking, we have the creativity, communication, and collaboration. But it does have, there's no hierarchy which you can that can take place. But collaboration is actually, I feel for me, collaboration is the bedrock of everything. If you cannot work together, then there's no inclusion. And then she goes, "I'll call you back." But I felt I could see that she was disappointed because I said I needed to know what she had seen as a classroom teacher, or what the parent had seen. What is nudging them towards having a placement assessment for the child. If there's really a diagnosis, then you tell me, "Oh, I have a child with autism, or I have a child with dyslexia, or I have a diagnosis with dyslexia. Can you do a placement assessment or an assessment that will show us the next day?" Because what they were calling me for was more like, how can you help the child after the assessment if you do the assessment? So I just felt these people did not understand what collaboration is all about, and they do not understand what inclusive education is all about. Because inclusive education, as the bedrock of inclusive education, is collaboration, because we have several professionals working in an inclusive setting. We have the speech therapist, educational therapist, physical therapist, special educator, occupational speech therapist, and a host of a multidisciplinary team, even the parents. that are working with the child. So if we do not collaborate, how do you want to help the child? That was one experience I had, and I felt there's a lot to be done in the area of the collaboration among professionals in inclusive education. Another thing that got me to put this topic up was I had this child whom the parents reached out to me for an assessment of the child. Of course, like I said, I do not do diagnostic assessment because I'm not a physical therapist or a um, pediatrician or a psychiatrist, sorry. So yeah, so I said to the mom, I'm going to do a placement assessment, or I could do an informal assessment so I can get a baseline, and then I will use the programs I have to begin to provide intervention for this child. And so I did an informal assessment, got my facts together, sent a copy of what I had done, and then we began working with this child. We had speech therapy with this child for about 6 months or thereabout, yeah, 6 months. And each week we sent her the report of the intervention or the therapy, as you may want to put it. And after 2 months, she came to me. That was about the 7th month or 8th month of the intervention, and brought me a placement assessment report. So she said, "Oh, I got this report for you. I want you to work with everything in that report." Excuse me. So I looked at the report and I smiled and I said, "Okay, I've seen the report, but it doesn't say anything that this child had any form of any." I first asked, I said, "Did you tell the person that this child had been undergoing intervention?" She said, "Oh, yes, I did." And I said, "Did you show her the report we gave to you and the follow-up progress monitoring report?" And she goes, "Oh, yes, I did." So thankfully, I knew the lady, so I called her up like, "I saw your report, but it's like it's done in isolation because as professionals, I believe you're going to reach out to me, or if you're not reaching out to me, because I do assessment where I can reach out to the person working with the child, but I look at the report that has been given to me because the child had undergone or is undergoing intervention or therapy. So as either intervention or therapy, or have seen a report or a progress monitoring report, I look at that before I do a placement assessment because those also answer questions for me regarding the child." So I said to her, "I expected that you call me to speak with me or look at the report." And she goes, "Oh, I knew you were working with the child, but I didn't know there was any report." And for me, as a professional, that is not a holistic view or interpretation of the child, because collaboration entails that someone that is working with this child or someone is working with this child, if I'm coming in, because nobody is an island, we need to all come together and know how far we've gone and the how far I want to take the child, the next step for the child. That's a deficit which I saw and I felt it needed to be addressed in the field of special and inclusive education. And that's why I thought of talking about the SWOT of collaborative approach in special and inclusive education. Now, what is SWOT? I believe every one of us have heard what SWOT, SWOT. SWOT, S stands for strength, W stands for weaknesses, O stands for opportunity, and T stands for threat. Now, I thought to look at it in as simple as possible. And I wanted to talk about inclusive education before I go into the SWOT of the collaborative approach. And I'm going to make it as simple as possible. The whole essence of inclusive education is to ensure that every child have access to appropriate education. So remember the fourth sustainable developmental goal according to the UN. It says equal and appropriate education. So that's to do education, that is equal, inclusive and equitable education and lifelong learning opportunity for everyone. So that means learning must always take place. Education is very crucial. Be it a child with special needs or a child without special needs. Without special needs. So I'm just trying to get something out. I need to write it out. So Sorry, sorry about that. So which means education is very crucial. We all know the purpose of education. So for that, and that's the bedrock of inclusive education. That's the reason why inclusive education is a big deal everywhere in the world. We don't want to marginalize or sideline children living with special needs or individuals living with disability and say they cannot learn. They can learn, and they can learn with neurotypical children. So it that it behoves us to know the best way they can learn, which of course there are different several things we can do. And one of the some of the tools or some of the skills and strategies that are important in education educating these children is accommodation, modification, or alternative assessments. So that is one point I needed to make clear, that the reason for inclusive education is to ensure that individuals living with disability are not excluded from learning, from being educated. So inclusion can take place in any format. But what is important is these children are learning. Now, that settles what inclusive education is briefly. I mean, in a brief and a summary, I tried to do a summary of what that is. And then there's no way we can have an inclusive education or be in an inclusive education setting and not collaborate. Collaboration must take place. So I've seen cases where um, people say, okay, we have children with special needs in our classroom or in our schools, and we have an independent consultant with special needs, and they come in, they do an assessment, and then they give us somebody to work with the child, and the person works with the child maybe on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I know there are things that people do. Sometimes they have this way of sharing. So the most time people say the support staff or the shadow, but I still have my reservation when you come to when you say the word shadow, but special needs support person comes in, and like I said earlier on, the several needs the child will have. So if it's an academic need, the person might be a reading specialist or a numeracy specialist, or if it's a speech issue, it could be a speech therapist. If it's an occupational therapist, or it has to do with movement, cross movement, or fine movement skills. So it depends on what the child's need is. And if you're going to do that, I think you need to put in consideration several things. And if it's a behavioral issue, you need a behavioral analyst also in there to observe the child and then share ideas, share information, share the plan with the child, with everyone working with the child, with the classroom teacher, the teaching assistant, even with the school staff and everyone, so that generalization can take place. So that's one way you could do that. So for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, yes, we have to do what we have to do, because the way inclusive education is practiced in different parts of the world differs. So I studied in the US. My degree is a Master's of Arts in Teaching Special and Inclusive Education. And I was an international student at the Meredith College in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the USA. And the one good thing I like about that program is that as international students, they reach out to you to find out what were the things that were different in your country. So be proud to when I came in, they had some students from different parts of the world who gave them feedback, and the feedback was so useful to us that were coming behind such international students, because they realized that the way inclusive education is being practiced in the US, where you have all the professionals readily available, it's not the same, particularly in developing countries like ours in Nigeria. So what they did for us was they were very big on collaboration. They're very big on our professional learning community, where you meet different professionals working with one child and you deliberate on the issue and the best way you can provide support for that child. And I found that very, very helpful for me. So when I returned back to Nigeria, and I needed to work with children with some different kind of disability. And of course, I forgot to mention that in America, for you to be a special educator, that means you can work with children, different categories of children, ranging from that covers like 13 different disabilities. So 13 different disabilities, which includes autism, intellectual disability, specific learning disability, orthopedic impairments, other health impairments, traumatic brain injury, just to mention a few. So if you needed to understand what I was talking about, you need to go Google Individuals with Disability Education Act, and it will show you the various kind of children we can cater for. So that was what my training covers for. And the good thing about that is communication and speech impairment was also part of what I was trained to work with. The kind of children I was trained to work with also include speech and communication impairment. So when the speech therapist came in, because we don't train it on what speech is, what kind of disability, what areas could be affected for a child who's having speech issue. We talked about the causes and the various interventions that could take place, how the child will learn, because I am a special educator. So the way a child will learn in my class, the kind of support I need to provide. And then, like I said, because of the feedback from the previous international students who didn't have speech therapists in the part of the country they were coming from, they made sure we're exposed to speech therapists. We were able to observe them, we were able to speak with them, and we call it collaborative consultation. You could ask them questions, they show you the various activities and books you could use to teach these children, resources and all of that. So that gave us strength and power to say, you know what, I may be faced with a child with any kind of disability, but I'm able to meet that child need simply because of the exposure I had with a speech therapist or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. And of course, most time, because I worked in an inclusive school, most times when those related service providers, so we call them related service providers, when they come in to work with the children in my classroom, you are able to have a consultation with them where you ask what they've done, how far you've come, and things you're also doing. So you share ideas. It's called shared practice. You share ideas, you share information, resources, so that when the person is not around, you're able to continue working with that child. So that's what I learned. And coming back to Nigeria, it gave me this. It opened. I mean, I was able to work with more children. So I wouldn't say I'm not a speech therapist because I am not certified to be a speech therapist, but I have been trained to work with these children, and also children with orthopedic impairment, which includes cerebral palsy. But what gave me that strength, what gave me that advantage is that I was able to thank God for my school. I was able to collaborate with different professionals so that I could be able to work with children of different with different disability, and of course my certification covers for those different disability. So what am I trying to say here? What is the strength in collaborative approach? One of the strengths is that there's shared practice. So if, for example, in Nigeria, of course, this is not this is not a hidden fact that we do not have enough professionals in the field of special needs. So we don't have enough behavioral analysts, we do not have enough physical therapists, we do not have enough occupational therapists, speech therapists. But if we decide to come together and share ideas collaboratively, so it's not a matter of ego or I am more important or whatever it is that will be a barrier. Let's all put it aside and decide to work together for the benefit of the child. So as professionals, it's good for us to collaborate. It's good for us to come together. Remember, there's no way we can even work with the child without an individualized educational plan, and that's where also collaboration also takes place. Because when each person have done their various assessment of the child, you now pull up your goals and then just attack the targeted goals for the child in his IAP. So if we all do not sit down to collaborate, to speak and to share ideas, there's no way the child will benefit from our services. So it's always better for all of us to be in the know, share ideas so that we can move that child to the most independent level he or she can get to. That's collaboration. That is one of the strengths in collaboration for professionals. Another good strength is that it helps for the child to generalize the skills he has learned. So I give an example of when if an occupational therapist will come in and should show me the various activities I could use with a child while writing or while we're trying to do some fine motor related activities. So they give me ideas, and I'm able to work with the child whether the person is in or not. So imagine if we didn't sit down, we didn't think of, I didn't see her strength and she didn't see my strength. I wonder how I'll be able to provide accommodation for that child or be able to help that child in my classroom. So in areas of being able to put a proper IEP, that's one of the strengths of collaboration for that child. In the area of being able to, for the child to be able to generalize the skills learned, collaboration is very important among us. Also in the area where the parent comes in, we need to collaborate with the parents, because the truth is that the child does not stay with us all through. The child will have to go back home. So if the child goes back home, how does that child transfer the knowledge that he has learned back to home or any other setting, to different settings? So that's where collaboration with parents comes in. The parents share with us what they know about the child. We also share with the parents what we know about the child, and that way the child moves up. So what in the overall, the benefit is usually for the child, and even for us too as professionals, we learn from one another. We learn from the parents, and then the child involved moves faster. Generalization skills is improved, and the child is moving from one level of severity to a better level of severity. And of course, before you know it, you find out that the child, you can almost say that your child is doing well. The level of severity is almost negligible, because all we're trying to do with these children is move them to a level where we can almost say this child is no more living with a disability. Yes, most disabilities are lifelong, but it can be you can move the child from a very severe level to a mild level. So those are the strengths I was able to come up with while thinking about this topic. Now, what are the weaknesses? And I had to put a few things down thinking about it and doing my research about the weaknesses of shared practice in inclusive education. One of the things I wrote down is um, because there's no baseline for measurement of our professional skills in this part of the world, there's this fear of being vulnerable. So somebody says, oh, I shared this with this person, and this person is claiming as this to be his or her work or his or her idea. So that might be a weakness of collaborative approach, where people are scared, or they don't know to the level at which they need to share knowledge or skills or ideas when it comes to collaboration. But yeah, so this is some of the weaknesses. I also thought of another weakness in that you're thinking of, so there's no measure of the baseline of what to share. And then so people are afraid of being vulnerable. They want people to steal their ideas. But I always say to people that as an educator, you never, or as a professional, you never run dry. I'm not sure that don't run dry, so it's okay to keep sharing. But I just wanted to put it out there that some of the weaknesses that I realize is that people have this thing of, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want people to steal my ideas and make it theirs, or I don't know what I would say, and the person will think I'm not professional enough, and all of that. And this also goes back to the measure, the baseline measure. How do we measure our practice? How do we say this is what is obtainable and this is not obtainable in our field of practice? But so those are some of the weaknesses. How much is too much to share? How far is too far to share? I mean, what are the things, if I'm holding back, how will it affect the child? So it's always about the child, but there are weaknesses to collaborative approach, but we can find a way around it. We can decide on ways to make sure it falls into our strength so that the children also benefit. Now, what are the opportunities in the collaborative approach in inclusive of so what are the opportunities in collaborative approach in inclusive education practice? The opportunity is that because a lot of people are grouping and trying to find out what inclusive education should be. Imagine if we have like 4 to 5 professionals coming together and putting up like a template of what collaborative approach should look like, and you get it right, and most of the children you're working with are making tremendous improvement, and your school is doing well. Every child that comes to your school does well, and you're seeing improvements. Guess what's going to happen? People are going to reach out to you to show them the way. So you find that locally within your setting and outside your setting, there are opportunities for you to share what you know, to show them the template of what is obtainable. I understand that what is obtainable in the US and the UK might not be obtainable in Nigeria, but if we're able to tweak it and make it work, and we can see progress, we can see results, then we can take it from one school to the other. We can take it nationwide. We can take it outside the nation. We can take it to different parts of Africa and say, look, we have tried this approach in our own collaboration, as professionals in the area of inclusive education, and this has worked with same results. We have numbers of children that have done well simply because we sit down together, we talk about these children, we share ideas, we share information, we check what is right, what is not right, what should be done, what should not be done, and then you have something going on. You have a template that can be shared with other people. That's a great opportunity. So yeah, these are some of the opportunities that I saw when I was thinking about this issue. So you can share your model, your practice with other people, be it locally or internationally. And I mean, what more would you wish for if you know that what you have and what you're practicing would benefit children with special needs? I always say to people, for you to be in an inclusive setting or working with children with special needs, the joy is that you want to make a difference. So it doesn't have to be within your sphere, it could be outside your sphere, because not you can't reach every child. So what you've been able to master, you can share. And those are some of the opportunities that abound in collaborative approach within an inclusive education setting. Now, another thing that could be in the area of the threats is that because a lot of people, because I looked at our inclusive education practice, and there's some accommodation that has not been considered. So, for example, WAEC, I know they said, I know I've heard schools say to me that, oh, you can get a scribe, you can get excellent time, but beyond a scribe and excellent time, what are the things that help the children? So the threat will be that the external examination body might not be able to provide the same accommodation. So if, for example, we've come together to collaboratively say as professionals that this child will have to type out, or this child will have to what other accommodation could you have the child? The child would need an alternative assessment. With external body, our external bodies in Nigeria will to accept that. So that could be a threat. But if we still come together, we can overcome that threat also. So these are some of the things I thought of to share when it comes to strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in collaborative approach in inclusive education or inclusive practice. When we look at some of these SWOTs, you find out that the strengths outweighs most of the weaknesses and the threats. The opportunities are also encouraging because other children will get to benefit. And what more do we want as educators, as inclusive educators or special educators, than to ensure that no child is left behind when it comes to quality education? So yeah, I'll just do a summary of what I've spoken of so far, and all the summary of what I'm saying is that we need to begin to practice collaborative approaches. We need to come together. How can we collaborate? How do we share ideas? How do we share information, resources about our children living with disability, and how can we move them forward in our inclusive schools? And one of the ways we can do that is to make sure that we are open to other professionals. We put away our egos, we put away our pride, we put away our fear of being exposed or being vulnerable, and think of that child who will benefit from all that we know and we can do to help a child living with disability. I will end my today's episode on finding out with specialists on this note that we all can collaboratively work together to ensure that we move every child living with disability to the next level. So have a blessed week and a good evening, and I hope to see you again next week. Remember, this is episode 17 of Finding Out with Special Needs, and it is called the SWOT of Collaborative Approach in Inclusive Education. I remain Lola Aneke. and I will see you next week. Please do not forget to drop your comments and your questions below this video on the comment section so that I can address it when we meet next week. Thank you.